what we want to talk about in this section a little bit more is how we can manage those spare parts lists and avoid downtime, and how that fits into as the purpose of the webinar when we're talking about large system quotes. System quotes for a collector that has a large amount of CFM or small, it doesn't really make a difference. But with spare parts and things like that, the downside is a lot of people view them as it's the smaller or less important aspect of dust collector quotes. But for anybody who's been in a breakdown situation, having the right part at the right time is vital to getting things into operation as quickly as possible. We want to be able to minimize unexpected downtime or breakdowns as much as possible. So having a well-managed spare parts list is crucial to be able to do that. So we're going to talk about that a little bit more for the next few minutes. So if we go, Andy, to the next slide there, why do we need to identify our critical spares before a breakdown? We can see here an example of a spare parts list. Anything that we don't have on that list in our stockroom, for example, we are not going to be able to grab it quickly when we have a breakdown, right? Time is money, essentially. So when we have to address something unexpected or shut down completely, it negatively affects the productivity of workers, the plant in general. Any time spent trying to acquire these different items and not doing what you guys do well is definitely not good. So we want to help you and get you back on your feet as quickly as possible. Uh, Unfortunately, when we're looking at, obviously, again, when we're looking for those things that aren't there at the time, it only delays that much more. So we want to be able to identify then those spare parts that are critical. So how do we do that? Well, as we're talking in this webinar a little bit about our equipment packages, ductwork, and things like that, we want to make sure that we identify those parts that are vital for operation. So a lot of times we'll think of those as like our bags, our cages, pulse valves. Do we have enough of those parts on hand if something happens? Since we are getting a collector quote, we definitely don't want to wait until something breaks down uh, due to a damaged filter or a cage, and then go out try to get bags and cages purchased at the last minute. Good inventory management is essential in this part. As you can see on the spare parts list, we would be the ones that you can talk to about that, which ones are critical. We can see a number of different things listed on there: fan, motor parts, fan wheel, different parts for our airlocks and things like that. When we're looking at the entire baghouse project, when we need to account for these spare parts, why do you only want to go through people like us? Well, we essentially help you not have to go through 12 different vendors to be able to get pricing, understand the lead times, wait for the product to arrive. If we're the ones who designed your system, we know it the best. Our pricing for these different things is very good, and you'll be able to save yourself in the long term. Now, maybe true, if you look at the list, you might be able to find a gauge for a few bucks less. Maybe you can get a little bit faster than what we can acquire. But in general, in terms of bags, cages, and other important items, our pricing is very competitive, and we offer it with the best lead times that we can offer our customers. Uh, we are the OEM, we're the equipment people. So this is what we do, and we like to do it well. So that being the case, it's so much easier and beneficial to you as the customer to only work with one vendor for these different spare parts. We believe that also too, the best option when working out our system quotes is to include those on the pricing sheet at the very end. We showed a couple of those before, and I think, Andy, if you go to the next slide there, we a lot of times will put on there that option for an additional set of bags or cages. As you can see on the screen, there's a very simple quote there, but when you receive it from us, it'll look something like that. We want to make sure that those parts and essential items are included when we have the collector quoted. Again, we don't want to just put it off, think of it at a later date, uh, give it to somebody else. We want to make sure that you as a customer are well armed for the next day in case if anything does happen. We talked about some different parts and things like that for bags and cages. Because we are the direct OEM for this project or for whatever we are quoting, our quality is very good. It's superior and from a lot of, unfortunately, cheaper imports that we do see. Those are things that you don't get from us. We pride ourselves in getting almost everything made within the United States. We don't import anything. We're also the vendor who sized your system. We did the ductwork for it. We know what size bags and cages you need. We know the quality that you need, the different fabric types, for example. We'll know the different problems that you might be facing. So we want to make sure that you have us as a good partner in that sense. Sometimes we look at the overall project, like a new collector, when we think about our spares as well. Sometimes we can think of things even just like as a system refurbishment, that we'll need a list of different spare parts and things like that. You might have to buy from us a number of those different things, even if it's a large change out, maybe for 1,000 bags or 2,500 bags. We want to apply those same principles of being able to go through us, the people who know your collector very well. So how do we know how much to have in our inventory or how well to stock our stock room? We have on our website a really nice article. If you type in the search feature, spare parts list or managing inventory, you'll be able to find the article that's up on your screen. It's just a snippet that we have there. But we have a general process that we can follow to make sure that we have the right parts on our shelves, obviously at the right time. So if we go to the next slide there, Andy, we have just a bullet list of some different things that we can look at. And that's, again, listed on our website. We want to determine the standard lead time. Again, when we have a critical breakdown, we want to know how fast we can get our product. We also need to know if there's any strange lead time that might have to be accounted for as well. Those things are critical to make sure that you get the product at the right time. So we want to be able to account for those things ahead of time and understand that bags might take 3 weeks to get. A cage might take 4 weeks to get. We want to make sure that we understand that very well. Secondly, analyze the demand. How many bags and cages are we going through on a yearly basis? How often are we changing the gasket material? We want to understand how much or when we're using these different materials. Determine the reorder points, the points at which our inventory is to have to place an order to avoid a stock out. On our website, we have a nice little calculator and formula that you can follow to make sure that you have obviously the right amount in your stock rooms. Next, we have the economic order quantity. Some people will ask us, how much will it cost if I only get 100 bags or 200 bags? Generally, with this industry, larger quantities will offer better price savings or more price savings for you as the customer. We can obviously quote you 50 bags, or we can quote you 500 bags, and you can see the price differences. So when you're dealing with your stock room, those are some things to keep in mind. If you have the room to store those things, obviously purchasing things in larger quantities definitely is a bit better. Next, reorder frequency, how often we should be going through and placing those orders to make sure that we have our inventory at the right level. And then finally listed there is to review and adjust regularly. We want to make sure that we look at our stock rooms or our inventory lists either on a quarterly basis, every 6 months, or even yearly. Everything changes based off demand, lead time, other factors. We came out of a pandemic a few years ago, talks of a trade war. A lot of things were up in the air. So we definitely want to be proactive and make sure that we have the parts at the right time. Again, when we're dealing with a system quote, we want to talk to the vendors such as ourselves to make sure that we can get you any extra parts to avoid any unforeseen downtime or anything like that. We don't want to leave you scrambling to find your next part. So if we see on the slide there, how do we avoid overpaying things? A lot of people ask us, how do we get the best price possible? Well, generally speaking, when we need something fast, it will usually come at some sort of additional price, and we usually refer to that as a rush fee or an expedite. Now, when we quote an entire dust collector project, it's definitely more beneficial and economical for you, the customer, to order that additional set of bags, cages, or other parts with the entire order. The expedite fee, is something that is usually standard to be able to run additional product on an already full production line. Setup needs to be taken into account of. Takedown also. Sometimes we have to pay guys overtime to be able to run a certain set of bags and cages. So there's a lot of things that are involved when we look at that expedite fee, but that's one of the things that we have to face when we need something ASAP. So either way, having to buy our bags or cages, parts, or anything last minute, or paying that expedite definitely isn't the best use of our resources. Of course, we can't predict when something will happen that will cause us to have a change out, or if there's an emergency, a fire. But by managing well our critical spare parts list, we can at least avoid overpaying for filters, cages, and other parts. Other options that might be a good fit, something to talk about later, is to, when speaking about our spare parts in that, would be a bag or filter stocking program. That means a company like ourselves would keep on hand certain amounts of bags, cartridges, pleated filters, cages, anything that can be sent out really within 24 to 48 hours of receiving an order. This is a really great way if you need something in a very large quantity on a very regular basis. And it's a great way to get something fast from a company like ourselves. And we're obviously able to perceive the needs that you'll have once a year, once a quarter, etc. But you'll be able to avoid having to pay that rush or expedite fee. Experts like ourselves, bakehouse.com, we should be able to easily offer a program like that, especially to trusted customers. Good vendors such as ourselves are not interested in selling you only a product. As Dominic had mentioned, we want to offer solutions. We're educated and are interested in educating our customers to advise them on how to make the best decisions regarding their dust collection systems. We also like to offer different things such as inspections, system audits, training courses. Sometimes we can even include those in there when dealing with an entire system quote or with a large bulk order. Not a lot of people or companies do offer that. So we, again, want to make sure that we let you guys know about that. Again, we want to make sure that you are seeing solutions from us and not feel as if we're just trying to sell you something. Also, finally, a well-rounded vendor like ourselves might suggest, for example, going through us for multiple parts and components. Matt talked about this just a little bit. It's a lot easier and smarter to only have to go through one person or one company instead of having to go through or source 12 to 15 different things with 12 to 15 different companies. By only going through us, you're guaranteed to get faster results and answers than having to go through all those different companies. So definitely something to consider when you're looking at your equipment quotes. If we go to the next slide, sorry there, Andy. A lot of people ask us as well, how often do we need to change out different things? Whether that would be our bags or cages, solenoids, diaphragms, gasket material, etc. How often do we need to change out these things? Well, we have here an example of our maintenance checklist that's also available on our website. You can see here all the different things that we want to be checking daily, weekly, quarterly. Because the short answer of how often we need to change out these things is it really depends. It depends on how often your system is run, how aggressively as well. But if we're dealing with spare parts and our critical spare parts list, we want to make sure that we're proactive, right? A maintenance checklist such as this is definitely going to help us to make sure that we're ordering the right parts at the right time. If we notice something that isn't right, or maybe our diaphragm's wearing out, we want to make sure that we tell the stockroom person or ourselves, we submit a purchase order to get that item. We again want to make sure that we're well prepared in case anything were to happen. So this is on our website. If you want another example of this, we can send it to you after the program. As we again want to make sure that our customers are in the best of hands in that sense. So, in summary, basically, having a spare parts list and managing it might seem to be like the lesser or not as important part of our overall dust collection system, but as we've seen today, it definitely isn't. It's vital that we have the correct part and the correct quantity on hand to avoid any unforeseen breakdown, right? We might not always be able to predict when we're going to have the next outage due to an unforeseen factor, but what we can control and predict is our critical spare parts list. So if it's managed well, we'll avoid having to pay higher fees for bags, cages. We'll be able to get the best pricing, and it also makes sure that we're well organized enough to know what we need or when we need to place that next order to keep a good stock room. If anything unforeseen does occur, then we'll be able to get everyone back on their feet as quickly as possible and minimize as much as possible any downtime. If you have any questions, additional to this, feel free to put them in the chat or call us afterward, and we'd be definitely more than willing to go over some of these things with you as well.